All right, good morning. We are here to talk about big feelings today in our live discussion. My name is Meredith, and I'm a parenting educator with Parenting Now. I facilitate infants, ones, twos, and threes groups and provide one-on-one support to families. And we have Allie with us as well. Allie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Allie. I'm also a parenting educator at Parenting Now. I'm also a Montessori trained early childhood teacher who's been working in the classrooms with kiddos for about 20 years. And I specialize in peace education and teaching mindfulness to young children.
So you'll have lots of wonderful things to share about how we can help weather the storm of all those big feelings. All the feelings that can come up with our kiddos. We are recording today, so parents who are on live with us will have their videos turned off and will be muted. And when we have questions at the end, you can either unmute yourself or you can also ask questions in the chat box. And we'll have this recording posted after the fact on our website and on our Facebook page. So as I said, we're going to be talking about big feelings today and how we can support our kiddos as they're learning to manage all those things. And that's a huge part of childhood. It's such an important topic. Regardless, all the time, there can be a lot of confusion and conflict that comes up between parent and child because our children sometimes have these really, really big reactions that can seem to just, come out of nowhere and catch us off guard. They can be really upsetting for us. And there's a lot that children are feeling, and they don't know how to manage them, when they're young, until we teach them. So we'll be talking about ways that we can help build those skills today. One of the other things that we know about children is they are really in tune to the feelings of people around them. I had an experience with my son about a month into stay-home orders where I was having a really tough time. I sort of hit that COVID wall, and he had a day where all he did basically was lay on the floor. And every time I tried to talk to him, he just said, "Everything is so hard." And I said, "Yeah, oh my gosh, that's exactly how I feel. Thank you. Thank you for vocalizing everything that I'm feeling right now." So sometimes our children do a really amazing job of mirroring back the things that we ourselves are feeling, which can be, just a nice reflection for us to have. So what is emotional regulation? Emotional regulation is the ability of our children or ourselves, the human ability to be able to recognize the feelings that we're feeling, to hopefully be able to put a label on them, and to be able to process them and express them in an appropriate way. And so there's different skills that come along with that. We're going to talk, first of all, with recognizing what the feelings are. So being able to, as Dr. Dan Siegel puts it, name it to tame it. And that can be hard to talk about with kids, especially at first, starting to get used to that as a parent. To take a big concept like frustration or annoyance and try to explain what that feels like to a young child can be tricky. So Allie, I would love for you to share a little bit about how you've done that with children, maybe kiddos aged like 18 months to 3-ish. How do you explain what feelings even are?
Yeah. So I think the best way to do that is when they are having those big emotions, helping them to name it, just like Meredith said. So if your kiddo is super angry because they didn't get their way, just saying that word, "You seem really angry right now. Are you feeling angry?" Maybe they're really sad about something. "You seem really sad. Are you sad right now?" If you label those emotions for them and not just tell them that they're feeling that way, like you're sad right now, instead of just ask it as a question, "Are you feeling sad? You seem like you might be feeling sad." When you label those emotions, they start to put together that emotion they're having with that word. And then eventually they learn like, oh, that's what that emotion is called. So when we support them in that way to let them know it's okay to have these feelings, and this might be the feeling that you're having. So just naming it for them in that way.
Yeah, that's such an important part of the process. And sometimes just naming it to them can really relieve a lot of the feeling that they're having. Just having that validation can sometimes help them move through the moment way quicker. And so that can be a really pleasant surprise. And we just say, "Oh, yeah, are you feeling really upset? You seem really mad right now." "Yeah, I am." and then they're ready to move on. That's of course not always the case, but sometimes that can be a very pleasant surprise when, yeah, just having that name helps them feel that validation. How would you, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, just to add that also you can do the same for yourself. And it doesn't always have to be a negative emotion. You could be outside and the wind blows and you could say to your child, wow, that cool breeze makes me feel so peaceful. And then they're kind of relating that, oh, that must be that feeling when that is happening. Like, oh, I can see my mom's face. She's saying she's feeling peaceful. Look at her face. You can do the same thing if you're around other children with your child. You can point out to if their friend is sad or hurt, you could say, oh, your friend seems really sad right now. Look at their face. Do you think they're feeling sad? So it doesn't always have to be them that's experiencing the emotion. You definitely can help name those emotions with the people around them as well.
Absolutely. And that's such an important point. We sometimes focus a lot on talking with children about negative emotions because those are the ones that can come up a lot. That can be those points of conflict or when those big meltdowns are happening. But it's really important for them to learn about positive emotions too. We definitely want them to learn, all the wonderful names for all the great feelings too. How would you talk with young children about the ways that their body physically feels when they're having different sorts of feelings?
Yeah, so you can break it down. You can start introducing those mindfulness skills where mindfulness is just being mindful, being in the present moment. So if your child is having a really big emotion, a lot of times it's really hard to teach those mindfulness things in the moment. So this would be more something that you would do when your child is not having a big emotion. So you can play little games with them, like, let's focus right now on our hands. How do your hands feel right now? How do your feet feel? What about your shoulders? You can bring that attention to their different body parts when they're not having the big emotions, because then you're kind of training their mind to pay attention, to be in the present moment and to pay attention how their body feels. So then that way, when they have that practice and they are having that big emotion, then after, you've been doing that with them for a while, you could say like, yeah, you seem really angry. How does your body feel? And because they've already had that reference, they've already done that with you, then it's a lot easier for them to name that. But it definitely is something that takes practice when you're not in that moment with them.
Absolutely. Yeah, all of these skills, all the things we teach our children, right? We need to practice a lot. Our children need a lot of practice to learn, and practicing outside the moment when their brains are more geared towards being able to learn something new is going to be super, super helpful. It can sometimes be nice to check in on their heartbeats, whether they're really excited or really upset. Anytime that there's a big feeling going on or that they've just been, running really hard, having them put their hand on their chest, feeling for their heart and seeing how fast or how slow their heart is beating can be really grounding and a really nice way for them to just tune into what's going on for them.
And I also wanted to add too, that's another one where you can talk about yourself because they're not having the big emotion, but let's say something else is happening and you could say, oh, I'm feeling really frustrated that I dropped that dish and broke it. Oh, my shoulders are feeling a little tense. I think I'll take a deep breath and see how that makes me feel. Because they're not having the big emotion, but you might be having a big emotion. So they're more receptive to learning about how their body is tensing up and how they're feeling when they're not having that big moment.
Yeah, absolutely. It's talking about feelings and learning about emotions is an ongoing conversation. And it's so great to share how we're feeling. And that can actually also help us calm down, which can be really helpful. Talking about, how the characters are feeling in books, the emotions and the feelings that, the cars or the trains or the toys, whatever we're playing with them, the feelings that those characters are having can also be, just great ways to incorporate it as an ongoing conversation into life with feelings. So after we've helped our children start learning the names of emotions, being able to talk about what they're feeling, being able to notice, what do we teach them about how to process them? What are they supposed to do with those feelings?
So again, that's going to be something that you do when they're not having those big emotions. You can play lots of games with them, mindful games, where I like to call them breathing games. Instead of just saying, let's take a deep breath, to a kid that's like, that doesn't sound very fun. But if you're like, do you want to play a breathing game with me? They're like, wow, a game? Yeah, I do. So you could do something like that where you pretend to have two flowers and you smell the flower and then you blow like a dandelion wish. And that becomes a game, but you're also teaching them a coping skill and you're teaching them mindfulness. And that's something that is a tool that they can eventually use to help them to process their feelings, to calm down. You can also teach them little songs. When I'm mad and I like to calm down, I stomp my feet 3 times. I mean, you could make it up.
Uh-huh.
So you could teach them to do that,
Yeah,
stomping their
great.
feet. And like Meredith said, with their toys, I think that is my child in particular, that's the most receptive way I think she absorbs how she can deal with her emotions, is that we take her little stuffies or her little animals or people, whatever it is she's playing with, and sometimes we'll just act out like, oh, I'm really mad that you took that from me. And I always ask her the questions like, what should I do? I'm so mad. And then she's able to verbalize, well, maybe you should take a deep breath, or maybe you should stomp your feet. So it's really good for them in their play to be able to express and talk about what you can do when you have those big emotions.
Absolutely. It's an opportunity for them to feel like they know it and to be the teacher almost, to be, you know, even though we've taught them the skill originally, they're teaching it back to the toy or to the stuffed animal, you know, whatever it is. And that's such a good part of their learning process. And it helps them feel really good, you know, to feel like, oh, yeah, I know what to do. You know, I get to share this with someone else. That's a wonderful feeling.
And
And
just about the different age groups, I was going to say too, is like, it depends on how old your child is. But with any child, really, breathing, I think all of them are receptive to a deep breath. With the younger kids, like I said, you can introduce it with a game, but just taking that deep breath, modeling it yourself, they tend to just kind of follow your lead. With really young kids, toddlers, like I mentioned before, stomping your feet is something that's really helpful for them. I've had preschoolers who go to the recycling bin and rip some paper if they're feeling frustrated, and that really feels good to just get that energy out. Again, our goal is not to bottle up those emotions, but to give them safe ways and appropriate ways to express those emotions. So ripping paper is a really good one for preschool age kids. I've even had elementary kids who also were like, yes, I would love to rip some paper. A lot of times too with elementary kids, they really just want that space. It's kind of embarrassing to them to have those big emotions around their friends. So just teaching them to say, I need a little space right now. And then also teaching them that they can come back when they have calmed down and let their friend know, expressing to their friend what they do need. I really didn't like it when you just took my paper from me when I was working. Can you please not do that again? Like, just that is such a relief for a lot of elementary kids because they were able to express it and say what they need. And you can even start teaching that at preschool age. I definitely, in my preschool classroom, start those skills early. And it's such a relief to kids to be able to realize what they can do. Like, oh, I can let them know about it. And I can ask them to please stop. It can be simple for a preschooler. Please stop. That's all they have to say.
yeah, we want them to feel like there's something that they can do. We don't want them to feel powerless in the situation. Mm-hmm. And I love that you gave a few different options because, yeah, not just the age of our children, but their own personality, their temperament, their likes and dislikes all play a factor in what's going to be most beneficial to them. So there are some children who will love, you know, tearing paper, who feel a huge emotional release from, you know, being able to shred something up and, you know, have a little destructive energy. And then there's the children who really are going to need just a big hug, you know, a lot of closeness or comfort, or just that extra physical, you know, sensory input of having a weighted blanket or a big squeeze from, you know, from a parent or from an adult. Having some sort of, just physical input can be really valuable for some children. Some of them, like you said, Allie, are going to want some space. Some of them are really going to enjoy, you know, big breaths. Some of them are going to want to stomp or dance or shake. And so it really can be a lot of fun as a family to come up with something together. You know, there isn't a one size fits all. We don't want parents to walk away feeling like, oh, I heard on this, you know, I heard in this live discussion that there's this one thing that I should do and my child won't do it. So there must be something wrong with them or wrong with me. And that's not the case at all. You know, what works best for your child, what sort of, how, you know, thinking about your family's values, your family's culture, you know, for your individual family unit, how do you want people in your family to express anger? What's going to be the way that we work through our big feelings? You get to come up with that, and then teach it. We have to know what we want them to do before we can tell them to do it.
Definitely. Temperament is huge when it comes to how they're going to express themselves. And in my classrooms, in my preschool classrooms, I have a little piece area, and there in the piece area, I have like a basket of several different sensory kind of experiences so that children can gravitate towards what's helping them to feel better. And to realize too that we're all different and we all react differently, and that's okay. And we all need different things. And just teaching that at an early age too helps them to accept themselves and build that self-confidence. So you can even do that at home. You can definitely try out different things to see what they resonate towards that helps them feel better, and start with things that help you feel better. And then if that doesn't work, then you can start branching out and thinking of some other things.
Yeah, just like we have big feelings that we have to work through, our children do as well. And I love, Ali, that you said earlier that we don't want them to be stuffing the feelings down. Emotional regulation isn't about stopping feelings from happening. It's about moving through them. And people sometimes talk about the healing power of the tantrum. Sometimes our children have, not necessarily something big that's happened, but all these little things that have built up throughout the day. And they just need a big, sometimes very loud emotional release. And so we want them to be able to get those feelings out. And then after they've calmed down, after we've sat and listened with them, we're going to talk about emotion coaching next. And listening is, the key component of that. But after they've worked through it, that's when we get to the teaching moment and to kind of problem solve whatever we want them to learn, whatever sort of the trigger point of the meltdown was. So emotion coaching is really about, as I said, just listening. And it's great because we sometimes feel like as parents, we're uncomfortable because our children are in distress. That doesn't feel good for us. That can be really upsetting or really triggering. And sometimes we want to fix it right away. We want to correct it and we want to move on. We want to just wrap it up in a bow and, have it be over with. But really what's most helpful for them and what needs to happen first is just that listening step. And as long as we can find ways to stay, calm ourselves, we just get to be the ones that listen. And one really nice way that I found for myself to remember that was something I stumbled across in a really sweet children's book called The Rabbit Listened. And I'll be sharing the full version of this after the fact, and so it'll be posted with this video. But basically, the moral of the story for those who haven't seen it is all these different animals come and there's the angry bear, all kinds of things come to help Taylor, who's very upset that the tower that Taylor built is knocked down. But what's really helpful is the rabbit, and the rabbit just sits and listens. And so sometimes I actually, when I'm having a hard time being with my son and his feelings, that serves as a helpful visualization to me. It's just to picture myself just with these really big ears. It can take me out of the moment of getting emotionally bogged down in whatever it is that's bothering him. And I can just kind of step away and just be that listening figure. So part of emotional coaching, as I said, is listening. And then part of it is kind of what we talked about before, echoing back, you sound like you're feeling really whatever, giving them, the name. So empathizing, helping them name it. And that can feel a little awkward at first, and it can be hard just to listen. Ali, do you have any strategies for parents to try who are having a hard time just sitting quietly and listening?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think if you think about, first off, when your children are having these big emotions, the first word you think of is connect. I need to connect with them. I think that is going to be so beneficial for you and your child as well. So if you can just think, I just need to connect with them. So taking that pause to respond instead of react, which is so tricky, but connect with them first. So the way I do that, and the way I know a lot of parents who have been trying to practice this way of being, is they name it first. So when you name that emotion, you must really be feeling angry right now. You're connecting with your child when you do that. You're kind of pausing yourself to kind of be like, okay, ground yourself out to get ready to embrace yourself for these big emotions that are going to keep coming for a little bit. So just using that first phrase of recognizing how they feel, that's going to anchor you and ground you. And it's also going to anchor your kid, because they're going to be like, oh, you see me. And instead of being like, you can't be that way, oh, I can be this way. You see me. You're listening to me. You're hearing me. And that just seems to calm children when they feel seen and feel heard. There's a wonderful book out there by Dr. Dan Siegel and Tina Payne Bryson called No Drama Discipline. They've actually written a lot more books together, but if you're interested in reading more about this, they talk about just what state our brain is in when we are having those big emotions. We're not using our logical thinking brain when that is happening. But when we connect with our children and we let them feel seen and heard, and we say, you must be feeling really sad right now, that kind of shifts them from that state of their brain, shifts into a more, oh, I can hear you now, instead of being in that flight or fright kind of stage. So starting with, I see you seem really sad, and then empathizing with them. It's really hard sometimes to not get what you want. I know, I've experienced that too. Just saying that you've gone through that can really help your child to calm down. And then just the fact that you don't have to fix it, like Meredith was saying, you don't have to fix it. You just need to be there. You need to just hold that space for them and let them know that, you're having a big feeling and I'm right here with you. You can have that feeling. We know through research that allowing our children to have those feelings, to support them in that discomfort, is actually really healthy for them to experience what that feels like. And then it passes quicker when we let them do that. So just starting to practice it in that way. So yeah, I think that's those steps there are going to help to ground you out. Showing that empathy. Gosh, it's really hard. I know it's so hard to do something you don't want to do, and just hold that space. You don't have to fix it after that.
That's great. Thank you, Allie. I want to make sure that we have time for questions. And so again, you can, if you have a question, you're welcome to type it into the chat. You can also go ahead and unmute yourself, or if you'd like us to unmute you, you can use one of the reactions to do either a thumbs up or a clap, and we'll know that you're wanting us to unmute you. So we'll go ahead and open up the floor for families who are here with us live. And even if you don't have a question, I would love to hear what age your child is and what some of the big feelings are that they've been having recently. I'll go ahead and give everyone a little bit more time, and we'll start answering some questions that were pre-submitted in advance, but we do want to give preference to those families who are, or give the families who are here a chance to ask live. And so feel free to jump in and cut us off at any point if you do have a question. But I wanted to just talk a little bit, spend a little more time, Allie, on some questions that came in about how to make sure that we are controlling our feelings. Oh, and we do have one from the chat, so let me jump in with that one first. So we have a parent with a 10-month-old, and so advice for someone who's younger than 1. So for the youngest ones, how do we do that?
Do you want me to take that one?
Yeah, if you'd like, yeah, you can go ahead and take it first, and then I can share.
Yeah, you can add on. So I think when our kiddos are under 1, of course, they don't have those words yet. So again, you can still say to them, you seem really sad right now. I mean, still naming those feelings for kiddos who don't have that language, you're introducing that language. So I think you can definitely do that as well. Also too, with kiddos who are really young too, you can also think about those basic needs. Are they hungry? Like, oh, maybe they need a snack. I mean, I know that thinks about like, it goes along with, oh, I need to fix it. But if that part is in place first, that might relieve some of the big emotions. So just making sure that, they've been fed, their diaper's been changed, those kinds of things can come up as well. Meredith, maybe you want to add on, because
just like you said, starting to introduce that language is really helpful. And there's lots of, really sweet like board books for babies and things that show, different feelings and faces. And that can be a great way to introduce it as well. Babies are at that age, and young toddlers are so curious about our faces and are so interested in watching what's going on. and how we're expressing different feelings. And that's a huge part of their emotional learning at that age. And so giving them a chance to see that in books, giving them a chance to see our face a lot and, the face of other people around them, and just kind of starting that conversation. And again, they're not going to be sharing a lot back with you at this point, but you can still say, oh, especially, around 10 months, there's so much that they're trying to do that they can't do. They might be working on walking or pulling up, and there's going to be times when they feel really frustrated. And so we can still give them that language of, oh, you were trying, you're working really hard, you were pulling on that, and it didn't come, or it didn't go into the, putting the blocks into the things, all the things that would frustrate a 10-month-old. You can explain what's happening, give them that language, because that's great vocabulary building in general. And then just say, oh, maybe you're feeling frustrated about that. Sometimes we feel mad when we can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah.
That question reminds
me of big ones. Yeah.
That just reminded me too of a lot of times too with our kiddos' behavior is also just realizing that they're not trying to misbehave. Like really the brain state that they're in, they're not saying, I'm just really going to throw this tantrum so I, really get my mom upset because I'm upset. Like they're honestly not thinking that way, right? And so really trying to look at the root of their behavior, really trying to uncover and unpack like what is causing the feelings that your child is having can also be really helpful in how you move forward with that, or maybe how you set up the day, a different day next time. That could also be really helpful because your child can fall down and get hurt. So if you know the root of that behavior is they're hurt, then you're probably going to offer a hug. Like, would you like a hug? Or would you like a Band-Aid? That's probably how you're going to deal with that emotion. But if they are watching like Daniel the Tiger and it's time for them to stop watching TV and move on to something else, and they're having really big emotions, then you might treat that a little bit differently. Maybe we know that being in that brain state when they're watching that TV, like they kind of need something that's going to also create those endorphins that they're experiencing when they're watching that. So you can give them another experience that's just as exciting. Like, we're going to watch Daniel Tiger for 1 more minute, and then how about we go play hide and seek with mom? Because that's just as exciting, and it's not considered a bribe. It's actually attending to their nervous system. Their nervous system is in a state of mind watching that show, so you can give their nervous system something just as exciting and fun to do, which helps that transition be easier. Yeah. So just looking at the root of the behavior, because you might handle it in different ways.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I love that sometimes, we have to make the transition kind of fun to get through it, because transitions are often a time when feelings come up. So we have a couple questions here. One is a 4-year-old who's testing boundaries. And the mom said she tends to have big emotions after I follow through on clear consequences. I don't want to escalate the situation by addressing the way she expresses the emotion in the moment. And mom knows that she's usually very frustrated. And how do I follow up with the way that she expresses her anger? And so I think the big part of that would be talking about it after the fact. And so I'm not sure if that's something that's part of kind of your process around, what happened. So it sounds like you're laying a clear consequence and you're following through, and that's great. We need to follow through on what we say we're going to do, right? Because we want our children to learn that they can trust our word, and that, throwing a big fit isn't necessarily going to get them out of it, right? We don't want them to kind of learn that accidental lesson. And so it's great that you're following through. It sounds like she's having some big reactions to that, and that's totally fine. You're really disappointed that it's time for us to leave, or, you're really angry, that I put the toy away because you were throwing it, depending on what you would say what was going on in the situation. You can still empathize with her feeling and follow through on it. And then after the consequences passed, after she's had a chance to calm down, then, you can come back to it and say, hey, you were really mad and you were throwing some of your toys, and there are other ways, there are other things you can do when you're angry. Let's talk about some of them. And you could even practice them and role play. Especially with a 4-year-old, she might have a lot of fun with you pretending to be her and her coming to, dole out the consequence and to lay down the limit. and then reminding you of what to do, and you can act out what you would want her to do. Children at that age really enjoy getting to play the grown-up sometimes, and that can be just a fun, silly way to be teaching an important lesson, but in a way that doesn't feel quite so parenty. Allie, is there anything that you would add to that?
I think also just keep in mind these times right now. These are not normal times, and we know our children are having way bigger emotions than they normally would. Life is really hard for us, so it's really hard for them right now, especially our older children. I mean, all of them actually, because they, like Meredith was saying earlier, they kind of mirror what's going on with us. So, I think just remembering that we're not going to punish them for their emotions. And I think natural consequences are wonderful and beautiful, and that might look really different. Those consequences might look different during these times. It might look more like, I see you're throwing your toys inside. Let's go outside to throw some toys. It's not okay to throw inside, opposed to go to your room, have some space. It's not okay to throw, because we're in really hard times right now, and we want our children to do what's appropriate, but just keep in mind that they're under a lot of stress as well.
Yeah, this is a good time to get a little bit flexible. That's a really good point. And we have a question along those lines. It's pre-COVID, my daughter was working on social skills and emotional regulation in kinder. I feel like what I do to help her isn't enough. How can I effectively help her when social events aren't available to teach or practice emotional regulation skills? And that's such a great question, because this is so much of what they learn in preschool and kindergarten. There's so much emotional learning that goes on being with other people who aren't us. And unfortunately, there's limits on that right now, very understandably. And so I would first want to address, you're feeling that what you're doing isn't enough, because that's a feeling that so many parents have, regardless of the situation. That's sort of like this constant state of being a parent, right? Is worrying that you're not doing enough. And so just to address that feeling, I would want you to maybe find something that you feel like you are doing well, and just spend a little bit of focus on that, just to take a little bit of that off of you, because that's such a hard feeling to have as a parent. And just to remember too, that there's a lot of benefit that she is getting from spending extra time with you. So even though there's something that's missing right now, there's a lot of positive she's getting too. And so, that was just the first piece I wanted to, which wasn't really the core of the question, but I just wanted to address that, because that parental guilt and that fear of insufficiency is such a heartbreaking and tough one, for so many parents. But Allie, do you want to talk a little bit about ways that you would support a kindergarten age child, at home, just with a parent, or just with, just with their family unit?
Yeah, first of all of our children are in the same boat. All of our children are not experiencing the experiences that they normally would be experiencing, where they would have those social skills being practiced every day with their friends. So they're all in the same boat. And then eventually, when they all come together again, they're all going to kind of be in the same level, because that's just where we are right now. So just surrendering to that first off, and knowing that you're not alone, your child's not alone. Many of us are experiencing that in our families, and witnessing our children going through that. And then second, I would say that she is getting a lot of social skills through you. So there is some social skills happening, even if you can't see them. She's definitely learning from you. And then second, I would say, again, use those toys, use that play for social skills. You can, if you think she needs to work on a certain skill, like maybe you're thinking she really needs to work on taking turns, that's something that she has a hard time doing, then you can get out her stuffies, you can get out her whatever people she plays with, and you can pretend that someone's in that situation, and what should she do? I really want to turn, and then get her feedback. Again, you can use that role play to teach social skills right now in their play.
Yeah, I've seen really cute things where parents have set up like a larger game that would have like 6 children playing, but with stuffed animals or dolls, and the child gets to play all the different characters, or maybe you play some of them. Or if you have a child who's that age who really enjoys storytelling, you can like sit down and make a picture book together, where they're drawing some pictures and you're writing out some words. stories, songs, play, I think are the main tools that we have right now to try to teach some of that. And so just, again, going off the things that they enjoy, you know, wanting it to be fun and, you know, low stakes. You know, we don't, if they stop halfway through the game, you know, you've got the whole setup and you've got all the animals taking turns and your child's done and ready to move on, that's totally fine. You know, we don't have to feel like those teaching moments are something that we have to, it doesn't have to look a particular way. Even if they're just taking in a little piece of it, that's totally fine. You know, we're sort of planting these seeds, and like Ali said, when children do come back together, whether it's in a small group or in a, you know, full class, whatever that looks like down the road, there's going to be a lot of relearning and navigating this. And so, yeah, just laying those little seeds now so that they can blossom and grow later, I think is the best that any of us can do in this tough situation. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, that's our half hour. And so we are going to go ahead and wrap up. I wanted to spend just a quick minute on the idea of hardy versus hardened children. That's one of the ways that people like to describe sometimes how we think about our children's emotions. We don't want to harden them off to everything. We don't want them to not feel anything, but we want them to be hardy. We want them to have some resilience, a little bit of self-control, to be able to kind of bounce back and weather all the feelings that come. And so again, you know, knowing that any feelings they have, especially right now when things are such a mess in so many ways, you know, all those feelings that they have are totally fine. And yeah, just when we can, you know, through play, through fun in the moment, you know, whatever it works for them and for you, finding ways to just kind of help build a little bit of those skills and that recognition. Anything else that you want to add, Ali, as we wrap up for today?
I just want to say that parenting is hard in general, and it's even harder right now. So just having self-compassion for yourselves, parents, because it's hard. And whatever you can do to fill up your cup so that you are prepared for those hard moments that your kiddos are having, it's going to make it a lot easier for your whole family. So fill your cup up and know that it's hard, and you've got this. You really do. You're not alone.
Yeah. Yeah. Take care of yourselves. All right. Well, thanks all. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.